Most of you all are familiar with Kavita Jaiswal. My great pleasure to have you here, Kavita, and for us to have your, I think, third or fourth solo with us at Art Heritage, starting from 2005, and it's been a very long journey. You, of course, started up here with Rameshar Broota. I thought the way we would structure our talk today is just for you to give us a little bit of background about where you began, how you began, what were some of the core concepts that were in your work from the very beginning and that have, through the years, been the thread that has tied the work together. And then maybe we can transition to some of your photography work to begin with, maybe with that work there, and then move on to the video work in the back, and then maybe a couple of the paintings. The idea here is we want to complement what we're talking about today here with the webinar that will be at 7:30 on Zoom. So we don't want to overlap the contents too much. So maybe you can start there. The days when Kavita Jaiswal was not an artist, but a budding literature student.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Thanks, Arik, for the intro. And yes, I did not initially become a painter. I didn't join College of Art, and I finished my graduation in literature. And there was something that's always bugging me about the book, you know. And I said, no, this is not my cup of tea, and I don't want to get into teaching. So, and I used to paint, you know. So then a friend of mine from college brought me here. His sisters were learning music here.
Okay.
So that's how I landed here. Went up to the department, met Mr. Broota, and I joined him. He says, "Acha, shuru karo abhi, dekhte hain." So within 2 weeks, he told me, he says, "Why don't you come every day? And I think you have a lot of potential to be an artist." So I said, "I don't know anything about it." So that's where I started with him.
Okay.
And right from the beginning, of course, I went through the entire study, you know, of how you study art in college, because sir was very meticulous about that. So we used to make something like 100 drawings a day, 50 to 100, we were expected. So many of them used to be just line drawing. And when I would do the line, he would tell me, "Now from tomorrow, just don't shade it in, just do your line is strong." So that's what he found. He's amazing as a teacher, you know, and that's what he asked me to develop, you know. And so I did the recognizable forms, I did everything that I could see and bring them to the table. And after about 10 or 12 years of doing that, I started to feel that this is now not my thing. I needed to open the surface tension, which creates the form, you know, which binds a structure together and gives it a recognizable image. And I used to be an athlete in school, you know, and Christine is right here, she was my classmate, and nationals and running against the wind and long jump and everything, and I I loved that freedom. And freedom was something that I've always looked for in life, and my parents gave me that freedom, and so did the rest of my family and my husband and everybody possible. And then I met Mr. Alkazi, the alma-mater, my total, you know, like, he's the one who brought me up as an artist.
Okay.
I was in my late 20s when I met him, and Mrs. Roshan Alkazi, and they were so nice to me. They walked into my first, there was a solo exhibition upstairs in 1999 called Subconscious Excavations, and he walked in, and you know, he was there for about 45 minutes, didn't speak a word with me, and he just looked and looked and looked and looked, and then he came up to me and he said, "Can I have the pleasure of buying 6 of these works?" Oh my God, I nearly fainted. I said, "Okay." So that was the beginning of my journey with him, and then it went on, and now Mrs. Alana and you are right here holding my hand still.
So the works that you started with,
Yeah.
right, when you were being trained by Mr. Broota, they were more figurative, is that right?
Yes.
And then you slowly transitioned towards abstraction. Can you talk a little bit about that transition from a very formal, figurative type of work to where, not this work, but sort of the beginnings of abstraction coming into your life?
Yeah, so Triveni actually and Mr. Broota was very figurative and very structured, and I was quite, you know, different. And initially he also used to tell me, "You're too bold, You know, you don't want to do this, you don't want to do that. And then he realized. And I started to kind of bring in forms together. So I went to Manali and I took these photographs of the rock faces, which for me were very abstract. And I used to still do the human figure. So I did a whole series on the metamorphosis of the human form as with the rock-like structures. Then there was another one with the metamorphosis of the tree trunk and the arms, you know. And then there was this whole thing about one painting of Mr. Broota, which was, it used to be called something posthumously, you know, where the figure was just disappearing. So for me, I used to keep looking at that painting and I used to feel this is memory, you know. And when I went into abstraction, I went into a lot of layering in my work. So there used to be this darkest thing in front and then lighter and lighter and lighter tone as if memory was disappearing.
Okay.
You know, and that went on and on till almost 2011.
Okay.
Yeah. So this thing of the memory and this thing of the human mind.
But somewhere in between there, you also had sort of a spiritual awakening,
Yes.
right? Can you talk a little bit about that and how that transitioned, how that came into your work?
Yeah.
Was it always in your work? Was it a conscious decision? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Okay. So now if I look back, I feel that all art and all painters touch that spirit, you know, touch the spirit of the creator, and we harness the creator's energy. And that is why creativity, that's what happens in any form. In the year 2000, I was at Edinburgh and I was doing a residency there, and in that buzzing atmosphere of the etching studio, I used to start drowning into this silence. It was like a buzz, as if I was just going underwater, you know, glug, glug, glug. And I used to wonder what that was. It made me a little uncomfortable, but then I used to decipher that feeling as joy and peace, you know. So I did these CDs of etchings, which were just white on white, because I refused to put any ink on it. And I said, okay, this is just white, it has to be like this, you know. So that's when I realized. And when I came back, of course, life took me towards the Dalai Lama.
Sure.
And kind of I started understanding it, and then followed several masters. Today it's with Muji, who's clarified everything for me.
That's great.
But somewhere down the line, Tariq, I lost the distinction between life and art. You know, my whole life and my whole spiritual journey, as well as a person, as a human being, as a painter, everything just got combined together.
Okay.
And somehow I don't feel there's any distinction anymore.
Okay. So I think we'll stop there vis-a-vis your personal journey.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, you've worked in multiple mediums. As you just mentioned, you were in printmaking. You did printmaking for a bit. And we were lucky enough to have some of those works from Edinburgh in our printmaking show many years ago now.
Yes.
But you've also explored the realm of the digital. And when I say that, I mean both video as well as photography and digital photography. The works in this exhibition, when it comes to photography, we've broken up into two pieces. One that are just taken with the camera and represent the image in the frame, versus another kind of photography called composite photographs.
Yes.
That's what you've talked about. And the work here is that. So let's move to that work and maybe talk a little bit about this kind of work that you're doing.
So this particular work is also titled Pockets of Silence, where we root and grow, and it's a quotation by Mark Rothko,
Okay.
Who's a very well-known abstractionist and actually a very spiritual being too. And I was with my daughter in Philadelphia, and the seasons were changing. And then I was taking a series of these pictures, and this is the first time I've actually attempted layering of 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 photographs together in a transparent manner to create one composition. So for me, it's more like almost like a painted surface using the digital medium.
Okay.
And
so you view the digital as a tool, not a completely different medium. That's what I'm hearing from what you're saying.
Yes.
Instead of the brush, you're using
exactly.
the digital.
It's like paint. It's like the pen. For me, the camera,
Yeah.
you know, and what I'm seeing. And I'm always looking for abstraction in nature. And then I've come to realize that everything is actually abstract. You know, you zoom in and you zoom out and it's all abstract. You know, if you and I are standing together right now, I can project you as a form, you know.
Sure.
So if I zoom out, sit on the Hubble and go away, we'll just
Right, it'll just be a speck.
disintegrate, yeah.
But I think some of your work also has gone almost to the subatomic, right?
Yes.
I mean, can you talk a little bit about that?
Yes, the subatomic thing, it's beautiful observation because there was an exhibition called Subconscious Excavations where Mr. Alkazi picked up all those works from. And that's where I was speaking about the ground, you know, the earth in its physical state, and that nothing disappears without a trace and everything leaves its mark behind, you know. So I was looking at all the marks that were happening on the earth, you know, and then slowly it went into the consciousness, and that everything happens to us in our life leaves its impression behind on our soul and our mind and our awareness. And subatomic, because I felt that everything was so similar, and abstraction took me towards just removing the entire surface tension, you know, and going into the cell or going into the, I'm not a science student, so I don't know what it's called. You are the physicist here, so maybe you can fill me in with the technical words. But I feel that that is the only reality. And even at that subatomic level, now we've gone into quantum physics with the nanoparticle, where there's only emptiness and silence. And it is only a cloud of probability that exists, which appears and disappears almost simultaneously. So for me, I think nothing exists really, you know, we're only projecting it.
Okay, so I think we are limited on time,
Yeah.
which is why I'm sort of taking us to the
Yeah.
next level. Let's move towards some of your video work.
Right.
We have two works here. One is Millions of Tears, and this is something that we'll cover during the webinar, so I don't want to cover it right now. But there's another set of work right behind, around the corner. Maybe you can talk to us about one, your initial forays into video.
Yeah.
Where did that come from? How have you thought about it over time? I mean, you've worked in the video medium now for almost 10 years,
Yeah.
right? So if you can introduce us to how you were introduced to it, and then sort of how that journey has gone with, how that journey has evolved for you in the moving image, because a lot of your work implies movement, your video work shows movement. So if you could give us just, where did it begin, how are you thinking about it, how did you think about it, and how are you maybe thinking about it today?
Yeah, so you're so right, because everything for me is moving, nothing is static, everything is free and to go in its own direction. And I was feeling the need to get into even a kind of a rendering of my image in the moving spirit. And my first thing was, I took a muslin bag, I had taken some rocks to my students. I think Nishi was there, she was one of my students here, and I told them to draw those rocks. And when I looked into that bag, it looked like the womb of the earth. So I put my camera inside that bag and I took a video inside that and pulled it out. Then I took another, it was a red and a white bag, and it almost felt like the womb of a woman's body or a human body. You know, so that's where the video called Womb arrived. And but you know, it doesn't happen at the same time, sir, you know. So there was this data that was collecting with me, you know, and random, and everywhere I was going to cobwebs, I was going into the leaf and going deep into it, you know. So everything was either a zoom in or a zoom out at the cellular level.
Right, right, and this is the work, the Womb series is where, that was the work on the projects for India Art Fair,
Yes.
right? And that was sort of your first real exploration of it.
Yes.
Now, as you've gone through it over so many years, that being the 10 years ago,
Yeah.
how have you come to and withdrawn from video work? Can you talk to us about that a little bit?
You know, Tariq, I pick up a medium very spontaneously.
Okay.
You know, if there's something that I can express only in a video, in a moving image, I pick that up. Or something on paper, I do that, you know. And so if you notice all the different media, there's a little bit of a difference in the scale or, you know, going into the minutest details. Now, the video work for me is like, it takes me beyond the surface of the earth, you know. It takes me into a neither form nor formless space, you know, where we really cannot see it. And also spiritually I feel that there is actually within the formlessness are these forms like blips, you know, which arise. You know, and I always give the example of the ocean and the waves rise up and they come back into the ocean. They're made of the same water.
Sure.
So this is where this video also came in.
Now, what the video allows you to do, which your paper and your canvas works don't do, is they allow you to add sound. So how do you think about sound in your genre of abstraction, given that video allows you to bring that element in? Of course, you can always do it in an exhibition and have a soundscape, just even if you don't have video. But you've brought in sound very consciously. So can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So the sounds are also natural. Most of them I have recorded myself. Some I borrow. Like for instance, this video I went into soundblast.com and I got this sound which takes you into outer space because that's where I wanted this video to go, the mind to go.
Sure.
The Millions of Tears is the actual sound from the 9/11 water tank, which I've recorded incessantly again and again and got a good recording. You know, so I haven't yet put music to my work, and I don't promise not to do it because it's so spontaneous for me that if there's an image, you know, wanting something to happen to it, so be it.
Can I ask, when you're actually painting, do you listen to music?
All the time. All the time.
So there is a soundtrack in your mind as you're creating the work, is it? Or in your ears rather?
It's there and it's inspiring me and it's pushing me, but I'm not getting involved with it, with the sound, and I'm not illustrating that sound at that time.
Okay.
So most of this show I've done to one song called Comfortably Numb
by Pink Floyd, yes.
And it used to be blasting in the studio and I used to be doing that. There was the show before that, the 2014 show which I did here, that was on another Pink Floyd song called Shine On You Crazy Diamond.
Yes.
And it has 5 parts. So that crazy diamond went on and on. And in the middle I do, of course, there are other things. But yes, it's just so good to do that.
Okay.
And Pink Floyd, you know, is as creative. They are actually almost painters with music, you know. So it's like that sense.
Yeah, actually they're one of the few bands from the 60s and the 70s who, if you look at their live performances, they were one of the first to create these incredible light installations to the music, which was quite interesting.
Yeah.
So
and they bring in natural sounds also.
Yes,
the railway track and the machine and everything, they actually record that into the music.
Yes, exactly. Okay, let's move now to a more traditional medium of yours, which is canvas. I mean, I know historically you've worked mainly on paper, but also now a lot of the work is on canvas. So maybe we can look to this work and you can give us, this one, and you can give us, talk specifically about this work in the context of your arrival to this point in your journey through abstraction.
And actually this is a work which is the dearest to my heart because it was like bringing all the elements of this particular show together. And I called this the scientist's mind, you know, actually inspired by Carl Jung and his philosophy and being a scientist and, you know, using his, for his students, you know, for their recovery. And in this one it was the organic form because he speaks about life and art and science. It comes together, you know, when you read about his philosophy. So I had the organic form. And then came the mathematical calculations, and then of course the antenna, you know, which was also hard, catching the sound waves, and as simple as that. And then the nanoparticle, you know, when it catches light for that split nanosecond, creating a pattern. So this was my homage to the scientist.
So a lot of your works in this show they're either very bold, they have deep colors, like mainly black and white, but deep blacks and very strong, a bold presence, and other works are more silent in one way. You know, they're there to contemplate more. They're not in your face as much. Can you talk a little bit about that dichotomy as you were thinking about this show?
You know, Tariq, I live in the moment, and this is what the philosophy or my spiritual seeking has taught me. And it's very, very spontaneous. So depending on what energy is flowing through me at that time, that appears in my work. And I always feel artists, we are so transparent because of our work. People can just look through us and scan the whole being, you know. So if you've seen softer moments, maybe those were the peaceful, quieter moments. And not that the bolder images for me also are very quiet again. You know, if I'm speaking about the prayer stones over there, or I'm speaking even of something like the Rosetta Stone, that means gratitude for me. That means peace again, you know. So it's always the hope and the peace coming through. Okay. And of course, the flight of the bird and all that is also happening.
Yeah. Well, thank you for this overview. I mean, again, since we've broken up the evening into two parts, I don't want to overlap with what Jaiswal is going to discuss with you. But for the time being, I'll open it up to the audience. If there's anybody who's interested to ask a particular question, something that's nagging you, that you really need an answer to, please feel free.
I have a question,
Yeah.
Kavita. I'd like to ask you about your use of the non-language, because the text is there, but I mean, when you read it, it isn't text. It's, you know, something that you don't know. I mean, what it says, etc. So you talk about silence, but then the word is also there, and somehow the word is linked with the sort of sacredness of the word, regardless of what language it is.
Yeah.
So I just like you to expand on that use of non-text.
Yes. So that's a good question about the text, you know, the written word. Now, what I have been doing, for me, this it's like a spontaneous movement of the line.
Go back.
You know.
We can see you in the line.
Okay. So it's like a spontaneous movement of the line. So the line for me takes all kinds of shapes. So this time it went into this text because I started this with the Letters to the Wind. There was a series in 2016 when I used to walk against the wind, and I felt that I was communicating. So for me, this is a communication with the divine, communication with my own deepest self. And for me, it's not really what we see. You know, there's this proverb that read between the lines. So I feel that this is what is between the lines. This is the whole all-pervading presence, the universal presence that holds everything together. And this is the communication that's going on. And the text also takes on various, options. It goes into, okay, we'll talk about this later in the webinar, but it becomes a line, it becomes form, it appears purely as text, you know. So it's that word, and the ultimate word is the word, you know. That's when all, that also is, I feel, man-made. It's our mind that says this is sound and this is word, you know, and we say this is the divine, because we always want something to corroborate this very abstract, subconscious, unconscious feeling that is there in all of us, which we can't actually hold on to or decipher, but all of us have it, and it's all there inside.
Okay. Anybody else? Any younger people have some questions?
Can you tell a bit about this painting?
This one?
Yeah.
Okay, so this is this part of
No,
our chart?
it isn't.
Okay.
Please.
So that's lovely, because I'd love to talk about this one. This is, I did this painting in very bold strokes because I was resonating with what I had done at the video, and we were talking about destruction and war and all, and I was saying, okay, let me pray, let there be peace, you know. So I did this in that feeling of that darkness, you know, the black over here, and when I just did the black part, I felt it looked like the Rosetta Stone. And then I realized that the Rosetta Stone was a stone in hieroglyphics and the Sumerian script in gratitude to King Ptolemy, who was kind to his subjects. And and so for them it was a homage to King Ptolemy, and for me this was the homage to all the lost lives and what was happening all over the world due to war and destruction. And I did 2 parts of the text, and the center I just couldn't put anything here, and that's the time the Gaza, the genocide was on at that time, and I really felt that a whole civilization is gone. It makes me emotional even right now. So there's nothing left there. And what do we do to ourselves? That's the human mind going against the tide.
Thank you for asking. Yeah. Any other questions? Okay, if not, we'll take a short break. There's some tea and snacks, and we'll set up here for the webinar. Kavita ji will be here. We'll put a screen up, so even though you are physically present here, you can experience the webinar. So please do stick around, and we'll be back. We join in about 20 minutes, half an hour.